Thank you, Shikha, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gaurav Laghate, the moderator for this panel. We are going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on advertising spends, and I have with me an esteemed panel representing some of the biggest advertisers and media agencies. First of all, a big welcome to all of my panelists and viewers for joining us via video conferencing during such unprecedented times. So, as we talk about visualizing the impact of COVID on advertising, I think we all are clear on a couple of points, which is that consumption of media, in a way, TV as well as digital and other media also, has gone up tremendously. But the media owners have not been able to capitalize on this spike. And the reasons are many, from lockdown to disruption of supply chains and more. And the second point is that whenever a financial crisis or any crisis of that sort has hit the industry or the country, something that first cost cutting measures are taken by companies include the cut in the marketing spends. Though now, this is what we have seen during the months of April, May, and June. But now with IPL and festive season, Big Boss, KBC, and others coming, things seems to be improving a bit. So first of all, let me come to Sukhleen. RB is one of the largest and I believe second largest advertiser on TV in India. How do you see what changed during this pandemic for RB and as a category on the whole? India is not known for its hygiene practices much, but do you think that awareness increased during the pandemic?
For the question, Gaurav, am I audible?
Yes.
Perfect. I think worldwide, including in India, I think we've seen a seismic shift. And that shift is first in the adoption of the hygiene categories in the first place. So the pandemic has led to reversible consumer behavior. A lot of shifts that we are seeing. So earlier, the idea of hygiene was predominantly restricted to personal hygiene, good hand washing practices, personal hygiene, body hygiene. Now the narrative has shifted to home hygiene as well. And that is directly correlated with the way we've seen a surge in category adoption, whether it's floor, it's toilets, the increasing importance of disinfecting surfaces is on a rise. Post pandemic world, one of the big things all advertisers as well as marketers have learned is that we have a huge role to play in educating consumers. And their spends are directly correlated with categories that have a big role to play, especially in times like these, to prevent this disease from spreading any further. And I think in that regard, our brands have really been at the forefront. So whether it's Dettol on the health side or within hygiene portfolio, it's Harpic, it's Lysol. I think we've tried to do our best to help as much as we could while being extremely humble because this entire is extremely serious. And whatever best we can do with respect to educating consumers through public service messaging, giving products for government's aid, or for that matter, coming forward to educate consumers across mediums, whether it's even digital, through news portals. I think the need is really to educate.
Great. I believe you also donated 1 million liters of Harpic and Lysol, right? So, how the India, because there are two Indias within India, right? One is India, one is Bharat. How is marketing? How is different for these two specific? Do you follow a specific strategy for both both the markets?
For sure. I think when you're communicating to rural India, I mean, if you see in the last 5 years, almost 100 million new toilets got constructed. So there are many new people who are now in the fold of access of sanitation, which was not available to them from an infrastructure standpoint in the past. So when you're targeting consumers in lower income or in rural India, both your creative strategies as well as your deployment strategies, whether it's augmenting it in media dark geographies with mobile, whether it's which is right for that consumer, we have to definitely tailor make both creative solutions as well as deployment solutions.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll come back to you, Sukhleen. Now from RB to homegrown FMCG major Emami. Emami is known for personal and healthcare, including BoroPlus, Jandu Balm, and now I believe you are focusing more on immunity products also, right? So Harsha, what was Emami's reaction in terms of marketing spends when pandemic hit? because Indian government imposed one of the most stringent lockdowns across the world. So, what was your approach? Because I believe between the April to June, that quarter, you also significantly reduced your marketing spends.
Absolutely. The lockdown came all of a sudden. In fact, none of us were very prepared for it. The times were very uncertain. If you see the last later part of the March and specifically the April, I think nobody knew what's going to happen or what's going to come in the future months. So as company, I think what was very important for us is to understand key we cannot have everything in control. There were only few things which was in our control. We couldn't have any control over pandemic, etc. So as a company, what we could do to manage the company well. So obviously, since the demand, the outlook of the sales, etc., was not there, so we reduced our expenditure. And in fact, in the first quarter of this financial year, our expenditure reduced by to the tune of 70 to 80% is what I would say. That was quite a big uh,
Quite a big drop.
reduction, right? But once things were more clear, and if you see what now, I would say, in fact, in many of the channels, the TV, the demand is, I would say, back to normal. And in fact, we are also spending uh, uh, in the coming quarter and all, maybe more than what we used to do in the same quarter last year.
Right, right, right. And I believe you are focusing on immunity products also, right?
Yeah, because see, we were listening to consumers continuously, and what we could see that consumers were really interested in hygiene and health products, and particularly for immunity products in health. And we believed, we had a right to win there with our brand Jhandu, and we very quickly, could launch many new products in the first quarter itself, and specifically also targeting many niche audience, because we could see that mothers were looking for immunity products which the kids could very easily take. Otherwise, because generally they don't like taking chyawanprash, etc. So
Right.
what kind of products we could give to the kids, etc. So those were the things, which we could see as an opportunity and we could launch in the market.
Okay. So now, what is the media mix currently, and going I mean, in the future, how it look like? Which medias you will be focusing more on?
See, I think in the overall pandemic, I think two, three medias which has received a hit is certainly the newspapers, the outdoor media. Our focus has always been a lot in TV, which I believe will continue to be there for some time. But yes, the importance of digital media is increasing, and I strongly believe that over the time, the ratio of spend over there will increase.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So now we saw that, as you rightfully mentioned, that out of home, print, even radio, these media suffered very badly. Most of the advertisers pulled back, and I guess uh, apart from Amul, a lot of Amul was the only one which actually increased. So I will come to you, Lara, on on spends and returning TV to digital. Now marketers are saying that situation is improving month on month. Madison suggested that in the second half of 2020 will be much better than first half. If you can share more details on how badly the pandemic affected the overall edX and the revised forecast.
Sure. Okay, so I'll give you some context. So last year in 2019, the advertising market was about 68,000 crores. And when we started off this year, we had projected it to grow by 10% to 75,000 crores. But in March, all hell broke loose and the ad market completely collapsed because of coronavirus by as much as 65%. But that is something that we all know. I think what's a little less known is even in the first 3 months of the year, the ad market did shrink by 8%, because of the slowing down of the economy. Now, specific to Q2, April, May, June, because of the coronavirus, traditional media went down by as much as 71%, and digital media went down by 25%. more than half the advertisers disappeared from print and radio, and about a quarter from TV. So basically, if I look at the first half of the year, the market degrew by 39%, or the 35,000 crores that we did in H1 of 2019 has come down to 21,000 crores of H1 2020. But I think things are a lot better today, and we've all learned to adapt and live with the virus. And digital and TV are back with a bang. TV on the back of high impact properties of the current ongoing IPL, KBC, Big Boss is coming up. So I think IPL was predicted to pull in a big, as we can see, big haul of advertisers with higher rates compared to what we saw in March. So I think we are very optimistic about the second half of the year, and we believe it should grow by at least 60 to 70% of the first half, or about 6 to 13% of H2 of 2019. We believe print will also grow by about 45 to 65% in H2 compared to H1. But I think at an overall annual level, ADEX will still contract by about 14 to 18% and reach about anywhere from 55,000 to 58,000 crores compared to the 68,000 crores that we did in 2019.
And those are some grim numbers. But within that, which categories, which media you see will recover faster than others? TV, you said, of course, is growing faster.
So TV and digital have already recovered. Of course, the ones who are slow with the recovery are outdoor, cinema and radio. But print, we think, will recover well. I think we are quite hopeful about the festive season as well. And I think all these media should show signs of recovery in the festive period. Cinema, of course, depends on when cinema halls are allowed to be open and people can go there and view cinema.
Right. Great. Thank you. I will come back to you again, Lara, later. So let me bring in Chandramohan. BFSI sector is one of the largest sector to advertise on TV. If I go by some BARC numbers, it's the 7th largest category. And in January, the entire sector, banking, financial services, and insurance, they put some 3.2 million seconds of ads on TV. In April, that number came down to just 500,000 seconds. Big drop. Even now, while it's increased a bit, but still it's low. So, Chandramohan, when it comes to insurance, India, I believe, is just 3.7% penetration of insurance. And IRDA says that 130 new insurance products have been launched since May. So are people now looking for insurance products on their own? Has it helped the insurance sector and Bajaj Allianz in a way?
Sure. So let me first address the advertising spend part. Typically for BFSI and specifically for insurance, the spends gets skewed towards Q3 and primarily towards Q4. Typically the Q1 and Q2, the insurance players are low on advertising spends. Second is in context of the new mindset. So the insurance industry, I believe, is undergoing a transition. It was so far seen as a push-centric industry. Okay. Now, because of this new risk mitigation mindset, the risk mitigation products like pure term in health insurance products are taking precedence over savings or investment linked products. Okay. Even as per the latest Google data on search trends, okay, what is available latest is the June numbers. If you look at the search inquiries related to life insurance, it has grown by 38% in the month of June year on year. For pure term, it has grown by 62%. For health insurance, grown by 44%. Okay. Now coming back to us, for Bajaj Allianz Life, the growth has been 47% YTD on account of number of policies underwritten. Now this is coming on the back of our pure term product. Now it doesn't get reflected completely in the top line because the pure term product is almost 1/3, 1/4 the ticket size that of a savings or investment linked product. Now coming to the metrics which you spoke about, the penetration.
Right.
Now the real measure of seeing the health of the insurance industry is looking at the per capita cover of life insurance or the health insurance cover. This is actually determines the adequate coverage if the larger population at large has life insurance. So to my mind, the pandemic is changing that. There's an increasing infinity towards the core insurance products and the health insurance products.
Right. So, but coming to advertising of it, mostly insurance advertising is themed on fear. Fear of loss, fear of death, and that is how you have insurance products have been sold in the past. During such times, during the COVID times, has it changed? The theme has changed of advertising.
So the advertising has remained relevant to the mindset. In fact, I could say about life insurance company. Pre-COVID, we positioned ourselves on as a life goal enablers. So you invest long term so that you can enable your life goals or having your own startup or going on a dream holiday, so on and so forth. We have in fact changed the narrative and focused our marketing communications on the new mindset, and hence the term product has taken the precedence. So the narrative has changed. It's aligned to the new mindset.
Okay.
More than the brand or product, a large focus has been on to drive the digital adoption. The brands had to be seen as reassuring brands. And in context of COVID, when the customers couldn't visit the branches to get their post policy services catered, we had to focus on communicating availability of the width of our digital services in context of WhatsApp service, self-service portals. The customers can themselves go and transact themselves without the assistance of the agent or the branch personnel.
Okay. Thank you, Chandramohan. So coming to the banking brand, which has more creative and memorable brand campaigns than all other banks put together, if I may say so.
Thank you.
Karthi, like IPL is going on, and I still remember the "Why Take 4 when 6 is more" campaign. And you've done some really smart campaigns like when Ranveer's wedding time card mila kya and demonetization 811 campaign banking. So, how has the pandemic affected your marketing strategy? And have you made any changes to what your original messaging used to be?
Okay. So first I must qualify to say that because we are very small market share players in the industry, you quoted these large numbers of BFSI being 7th largest spenders, etc. I think if you took Kotak's number out of that, it won't even make a decimal point. So we've always had to be very frugal with our spending, and which is why your kind words had some truth in them in the context that our creative has always had to have great cut-through. But the creative cut-through came largely from great innovation in either product or experience or insight or a package of all of these things. 811 is a classic example where we were first off the block after demonetization to take the full account opening process online. And when you have something breakthrough like that, you don't need to spend a lot of money to tell that story. On top of that, when you tell the story really well, you don't need to spend a lot of money on media to tell it well. So in that sense, I don't think we have actually changed our body language about how much we will spend. We are certainly changing it about radically and quickly about where we will spend. We've not spent big money in print in a long time now, in over a decade. We've certainly been television forward. But I think over the last year or two, we have started to learn something different about that as well. When we took our KYC process fully online, we launched a small shot-at-home video with Ranveer, only on digital. And we found that salience as well as recall for that story got cut through within a couple of weeks of spending only on digital, probably at about 10% of what I used to spend on television. So I think there are important and valuable lessons coming from COVID. And it's like before COVID, there were always these video interaction tools. There were many of them, right? There was Skype and there was WebEx and even WhatsApp video and FaceTime and so on. But Zoom was just waiting for this moment to happen. And my suspicion is that the same is going to happen to the advertising industry as well. And I've been saying this for many years now, and I've been wrong for a long time. Maybe I'll get right over the next few years, that advertising actually is dead in the long run. Today, all brands are self-publishing and they are directly communicating with customers in many ways. And again, COVID, like that meme goes, COVID is the one that is triggering digital innovation for many of us. And I think that happened in the context of communicating with our customers as well, much more aggressively now than it has in the last, since the internet was born, frankly.
That's a very strong statement to make, that advertising is dead. Of course, we'll come back to you. We'll come back to that. But as we say that again, India versus Bharat. While digital is great, but TV still remains the massiest medium, if I may say so, or radio. So will that not affect, because to reach in the hinterland, to reach in the smaller areas, to the rural Bharat, will digital be enough, or?
So it surprised us, and I think it will surprise you to hear this as well. Throughout the first quarter of COVID, our account opening journey, where we used to spend about a few crores every month on performance advertising, and we shut it down completely. And the influx of accounts we saw from what we call Bharat, from locations where we don't even have branches, has really surprised us. And it is proving that we underestimate their digital savvy, so to speak, of these hinterland markets dramatically. So it's need-based. Once they know that this is a way for people to pay them, and they've all adopted, and we hear all these stories in urban India. I'm confident they're equally true in rural India, where they're adopting the ability to withdraw money from an ATM without having to use a debit card, to pay each other via tools like Google Pay, etc. So I think the rate of learning and growth in Bharat is equally aggressive.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. So now let me come to a media owner. In the way, Sudhakar, you are CEO of a Telugu news channel. If I may ask you, if you can share more details on how the pandemic has affected TV channels and print media, because viewership during the lockdown was at all-time high, especially for news channels. But as I understand, it has not helped the channels in terms of monetizing it. So, especially for the regional channel, if you may throw some light on that. Sudhakar, you're not audible. You're on mute.
Yeah. So of all the panelists, we as broadcasters have taken the largest and the biggest hit. We cannot afford to innovate because our product is media, which has to be consumed. The ad inventory is a perishable commodity. So whatever time or that inventory that we lost is not going to come back. So in terms of that, we have seen as much as a revenue plunge of about 80%, which is unprecedented. Generally, one player tends to do well and the other might sink, right? But across the categories, across all the broadcasters, so we've seen a revenue plunge of anywhere between the more fortunate ones have had the revenue plunges by about 40%, and not so fortunate ones have seen the revenues plunge by about 80%. So that has been a phenomenal and unprecedented, which we've seen slowdowns before. I mean, we've seen the industry in economical cycles where we've seen slowdowns, but this is something unprecedented in the history, if I might say. And if you look at, say, what Lara mentioned, the Q1 has seen the basic all indices of economics. We've seen a slowdown as such. If you compare the last year, 2019, which has been election year, so generally, all the political parties have loosened their purse strings, so that have added to the spike in terms of the advertising revenues. And 2020, this is not an election year, and Corona is like the final nail in the coffin. Generally, when the amount of time spent on television have increased, and we as news channels, basically, for GCs not having original content, basically people have turned on to news channels as well as OTT players. So in terms of viewership and all this stuff, we've gained phenomenally, but unfortunately we really have no option, or we couldn't manage to translate that into revenue gains, which is kind of unfortunate situation, as I would say. So in terms of the regional channels, basically regional news broadcasters as such, like us, so this is the final nail in the coffin. And if you look at I was just listening to Karthi. I beg to differ, and I have to. I have no option being television owner. Television, for any brand, which wants to build their salience or so, television is the trusted medium as such. And I wish Lara will back me on this with data, which shows that digital, whatever it is, people still trust television. People still trust news as a medium. I beg to differ on this, and I still believe that television is still an important medium, and I hope and I am sure that it will continue to remain relevant in times to come. Sure, digital is going to grow well, I think, but I would still believe, as a media owner in television, I still believe that television is going to grow. We've seen if you look at it, television is the first of the blocks in terms of coming back to normal, if I may call it. But one of the unfortunate things for us as regional broadcasters is that, all the schedules have gone haywire. If you look at IPL, it's not supposed to happen in September, October, which is kind of unprecedented. So you take all the big ticket properties like the IPL, the Big Boss, or regional television and Big Boss on regional television, and KBC. If you look at all the big ticket properties, unfortunately, have taken the larger pie out. We really can't complain because we are, these are, I would say we are kind of victims of unfortunate circumstances. But having said that, I think I still believe that the worst is over, and we've hit in rock bottom, and there's no way out but to make. The only way is to go up.
Okay,
So unlike other players, we cannot innovate because what can we innovate?
Mm-hmm. No, agreed. Thanks. So Karthi, would you have any rebuttal to that?
Okay. So first of all, I was naturally and deliberately provocative so that we would engineer some heated debate in this thing. So it's both useful and entertaining. So he's absolutely right. Television has great value as a platform of stature and for trust and so on. I don't debate that. My brand has benefited greatly from being on television. But, and we've used, in the context of Corona, everyone has used words like unprecedented and seismic and so on many times. So I don't want to be one more guy to say such a thing. But I do believe that we have not yet acknowledged how seriously this is going to change all our behaviors. There's a simple thing that Malcolm Gladwell says about how it takes 21 days to change a habit.
Yes.
So quitting smoking and 10,000 hours to become a genius at something.
Genius, yeah.
Because of Corona, we've all been home 6 months now, at least. Many of our behaviors, many of our habits have already changed, and many of our new skills are already beginning to harden. What is this going to mean for our consumption of media, for our consumption of passive media particularly? I don't have all the answers, but I can say for sure that things are changing, and they are changing faster than any of us like. Even I, for example, the bulk of our banking business is built in the traditional model. We have branches. Luckily for us, because of our relatively small market share, we have a much smaller branch footprint. So if all customers were to go fully digital overnight in the financial services space, we'd be better poised than, for example, many of our larger physical infrastructure-based peers. And that in that situation, we'd benefit. On the other hand, however, compared to a Google Pay or a Paytm or a Phone Pay, perhaps even my brand looks somewhat more traditional and fuddy-duddy, and I have a lot of catch-up to do. And like Sudhakar, I also feel, how can I innovate? What can I change? I also struggle with that. So it's not that I'm singling the media out for this punishment, Sudhakar. I think all of us are in it together, but all of us are going to be forced to face the beast and to figure out how we can reinvent ourselves, and perhaps how we can reinvent what we offer to consumers and what we're able to charge for it, who pays for the product and who consumes the product, exactly like we've done all these years. I think we're going to have to examine these questions very, very deep.
True. So two things that very interesting things. One, of course, the habit. And as we all are talking about that, COVID has been the biggest driver of digital transformation for the companies rather than anything else. And second is brand and brand royalty. So let me come to Harsh and Sukhleen. Has COVID resulted in end of brand loyalty? In the sense that if I am going to buy something and the usual brand that I buy, if it is not available, I may buy whatever is available. So will COVID affect that? Will COVID mark end of brand loyalty?
At the expense of being provocative, and thank you so much, Karthik, for the provocation. But I think brand loyalty is perhaps getting tested, but in a positive way. Because today, if you have brands that are certifying with internationally acclaimed accreditations on efficacy, on proven efficacy, especially with respect to the SARS COVID-19 virus, I mean, today as a consumer, even leave alone as a marketer, you would first be willing to pay the premium for the health and well-being of your family. So I think for brands, especially today, who are offering a real benefit, loyalty is perhaps something that consumers reward you with, because fundamental trust is intact, and that trust comes from a consistent demonstration of product efficacy, and that honestly is not going away, because consumers today are for sure demanding more value, because these are extremely tough times, because what we have discussed is perhaps an inflection point linked to our staying at home, new habits that are emerging, but there's a huge economic downturn also that we are witnessing around us, and the two are going together. There is extreme volatility, there is a lot of fear around us with respect to the uncertainty that lies ahead. And I think in times like this, consumers seek reassurance. And that's where brands that are built on the currency of trust, they benefit.
Okay.
Should I come in on that for a minute?
Yes, yes.
So, we overstate when we use the word brand loyalty. I believe we overstate it because no consumer is brand monogamous. To your example, that if I didn't find brand X, and I'll give you the best example that I've always found, if I'd prefer to drink Bisleri if I'm out, but if I don't find Bisleri, I'll accept any other brand. The fact that Bisleri wasn't there is actually only Bisleri's fault. It's not mine. I intended to be loyal, but I'm never going to be monogamous. All of us have a set of brands in our consideration set. We are roughly okay with any of those brands. What certainly I think COVID has tested is that, for example, the new categories in the hygiene space, where we were not even consumers before, suddenly we have started to become aggressive consumers of things like sanitizers, etc. We are yet learning. So we are, in that sense, I think brand virgins in the sanitizer space. So for us to achieve that comfort and that love and that dependency on particular brands and belief now may take a little time. So today, the fact that we are picking up any damn sanitizer brand, saying, yeah, at least it's sanitizer. The brand is actually sanitizer. So it's early days, I think, for the hygiene space, with no offense meant to either of you players in the category.
Some degree of commoditization is also a result of the e-commerce business growing at large.
Of course.
Click of a finger, you have choices available to you. But I think, Karthi, that also then puts the onus on marketers, not just to look at it as from purely marketing lens, but also from a commercial lens. If your are not available, then frankly, only you're to be blamed, right?
Exactly.
True. So, Harsh, on this, as well as now the discretionary spends have gone down. Only the basic and the essential, what we saw during the pandemic. Does that also affect in change in the marketing strategy? Harsh, you're on mute.
I think certainly, yes, to a certain extent it does. Because as a company, we always need to think what we need to do to bring back the consumer demand in any product. And what we were discussing about the consumer loyalty, I think loyalty to a great extent depends on the company. First of all, yes, your product should be available, when the consumer is going to buy it. And secondly, why should the consumer be loyal to you? Ultimately, they are looking for value. If you are able to give them the right value, right, something what they are looking for, something what they are getting only in your brand, they will always be more loyal to you, right? Otherwise, if the brands are me too, the products are me too, they will always be there will always be a few brands, products, which will be there in their consideration set, and they will be switching to each of them. This is either the schemes that the brands are running and so on.
So all the strategies that you may have used during the pandemic, are these makeshift one, or you think these might survive for a long term, even post-COVID world? Chandramohan, Karthi, or anyone else who would want to take this?
Just one, I think, many of the habits, which has been there, like, we are talking about hygiene, about health. Maybe, it might not stay at the same level where it is now, But certainly, these trends are going to be there, because I think consumers are becoming more conscious, they are becoming more educated, they are becoming more knowledgeable about the benefits of these things. And I certainly believe, that some of these trends will certainly stay.
Chandramohan?
I believe, Gaurav, it is also a matter of category. Certain categories, you see brand loyalty disappearing very fast. If you look at, say, certain things like healthcare, or say, for example, education, those are categories where the brand loyalty is not going to go in a jiffy, right? So I believe, in certain categories, yes, when you see hundreds of sanitizers in the market, it has become a commodity these days. It's like a Bisleri water bottle or so. It is any other sanitizer. So in that sense, it's a challenge for brands. How do you differentiate and how do you create brand loyalty is a big challenge, and probably a food for thought for all the marketeers is that it's a challenge. But I say it depends largely on the categories.
Agreed. So, Chandramohan, you're saying something.
Yeah, so one thing that is largely going to stay in BFSI and specifically in insurance is the adoption of digital, both by the customers and by the agent. Earlier, there was a lot of hand holding and push centric strategies deployed by the agent before he made a sale. Now the consumers are happy doing two things. One is all the post policy requirements. They're happy to themselves go on the self-service portals, apps, can get it done. The agents also have embraced the new way of digital in terms of prospecting and selling. Okay, in terms of the video calls, so on and so forth, they've done that. Also, what you have seen is the growth of digital transactions coming from the tier 2, tier 3 towns. So leading towns in terms of adopting digital from customers have been towns like Ranchi and Patna. We have had 82% growth in digital transactions in Q1. So trends like this will stick around even during the post-pandemic world.
Okay.
I would just add to that and reinforce that point and say, in financial services particularly, the only physical manifestation of our products and services were the checkbook and the credit card or the debit card. Nothing else was ever physical. We were frankly sleeping on the job for decades on digitization. So we have ourselves to blame for the customer not being digital because we never offered it to her. Today we are all scrambling and we'll all catch up. So it's probably a good thing for the world in general.
You say it's a good thing for the world, but journalists are known for a bit more cynical and looking at glass half empty kind of a scenario. So, Lara, I would start with you, and then anyone who may want to add. Sudhakar said that death knell for the traditional media. Do you think that COVID will be the death knell for the traditional media?
No, not at all. Not at all. It will be a death knell. I mean, still, even with COVID, the main media is television. Television is about 38% has market share of the total ADEX. However, something new that we've seen is digital has now emerged as a strong number 2. So digital has overtaken print. Digital now stands at about 25%, 30% market share. And print comes in at number 3 at 25% market share. So I don't think it's the end of traditional media. Definitely digital media is increasing, and over the last span of 10 years, it's come up from 0 or 1% to 30%. So digital is doing extremely well. But I don't think we can say it's a death knell for traditional media as such. I think also media needs to learn to collaborate, and I mean everything now has a digital element to it. If you look at TV and digital, all the OTT platforms, you look at print, even print has all the online editions, and also all media also have a certain digital element to it.
Agreed. But coming to that, as marketeers, do you guys think that on digital, the measurement, is it an issue, or do you think it's completely fine? I would like to start with Karthi because...
Look who's being provocative now. No, of course it's an issue. There's no argument that it's an issue. And I think the biggest marketeers in the world, both at Coke and Procter & Gamble have spoken at length about this. So I don't want to add anything new in that context. But let me say this also. I would say that measurement has always been broken, including for traditional media. The way we measure readership of newspapers, the way we measure viewership of television is also very, very badly broken. For example, for my audience, which tends to be a wafer-thin slice at the top of the socioeconomic profile, I have no basis or no way to be able to differentiate what they are watching, what they are reading in any substantially meaningful way. So if it's broken for traditional, then for sure, digital is a long way away. Any media, outdoor, for example, radio, all of them are broken. So I think we all use measurement like a blind man uses a stick, not to be able to see clearly, but to have a sense of the contours of the ground ahead of us, and we really use it in that fashion. And that's something that really saddens me, that despite so many advances in technology, we haven't been able to keep up and solve for rich measurement in any meaningful way. Again, provoking both Lara and Sudhakar to respond.
Yeah.
Well, Gaurav, a point to add is that, if you look at probably talking about the death knell of television, coming back to the point I said, as broadcasters, the business models will change probably. It's going to be a death knell, but I think the mix of advertising versus, say, pay-per-view or, subscription-driven revenue models. But India has been one of the few markets where I think if you look at broadcasters' revenues, I think we have about 90% of the revenues are from advertising and 10% from broadcast, which is not the case with any other broadcaster in the world. Probably COVID is a time for us to really rethink about our revenue mix as well, to really sustain. COVID taught us that, if you are so heavily reliant on one source of, revenues, it could disappear in a day, right? So I think it's actually a challenge for us broadcasters, but, having said that, India is a notorious market, where even if you look at digital as a medium, you take an example of YouTube, where the adoption is quite heavy out there. But YouTube is trying in new revenue models when they're saying that pay for ad-free viewership, and the adoption, even as if you see, Google has found out, the adoption is not very, very high. So I think India is a heavily price-sensitive market. The digital adoption, I believe, is going to stay, is going to have an uptick. Having said that, you really need to be careful, because again, it might be like traditional media where even digital becomes so reliant on advertisements, and then you believe all the marketeers one day will discover that digital is not the ROI that you have on digital might disappear in a day. So having said that, it is a chicken and egg situation where today digital might be cheap vis-a-vis television or print or any other medium for that matter. But remember that anything it's a mix that will change.
I mean, that's very interesting, but I don't know if digital is cheaper, because I still believe it allows you to target. But when it comes to cheap, I still believe TV would be the cheapest medium. I mean, Lara, would you agree on that?
Yes, I totally agree. TV would be the cheapest medium in terms of to reach out to a large number of audiences.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we have about 10 minutes left. So what would we do is, I would like all of you to, quickly in 2 minutes each, would share the biggest challenge that you faced during the pandemic, the biggest learning, and the way forward, what you think is going to be your marketing strategy. So maybe we can start with Karthi.
Oops. Okay. So it took me some time to get used, and I actually, me and my family quarantined ourselves 2 weeks earlier than the nation did, because our daughter arrived from the US on the 16th of March. So we were somewhat more prepared for a lockdown than the rest of you were. But having said that, it took me a little while to get into the mindset of waking up on time in the morning to start to clock in for work when I didn't have anywhere to go in the first couple of weeks. So my biggest challenge actually was breaking the inertia, because when I had to show up at office at 9:30, then everything worked backwards from there. When I just had to show up at my laptop at 9:30, then many things crumbled for the first couple of weeks. Luckily, it hasn't lasted. The biggest learning for me actually is that, frankly, and my colleagues will attest to this, I think I became much more human in this time. At office, I found that I was always very work-oriented, task-oriented. So whether it was meetings, phone calls, or even water cooler conversations, they were all work-oriented. Somehow, miraculously, as soon as we started meeting each other over Zoom, I find that I'm making the time organically to first inquire after people's well-being, their family situation, etc. And I think that's something that's percolating a lot. And that's really been the biggest learning and gain for me personally, that I have learned how to be more human and less task-oriented. I'm sorry, what was your third question? Was there one, or that's it? I can move on.
I was saying, going forward, how are things going to change for you?
I'm going to be incredibly scared to leave home to show up at office, frankly. So, and we have actually put in place policy for reasonably long-term work from home for as many people as is meaningful as well at our firm. So I'm going to leverage that to the hilt. The one thing that I have not done yet is to take up exercise seriously during this time, because of the time that's in theory opened up. That's the thing that I have to solve for.
Okay. Harsh.
I think as learning, I think as human beings, what I believe, in this COVID and pandemic, what I have learned here is that, we can do much more than what we believe we can. It's just that about the mindset, suddenly we have changed the way we used to work. Because earlier we used to always believe that travel is so important, without that the work cannot happen. And now just see, the whole world, the whole corporate world is running, and I would say running quite well, without a day's traveling, right? So I think we need to keep learning, unlearn few things, so that we can learn about what's yet to come in the future. I think so. That's something what's very important for me. The opportunities, yes, from the company's perspective, yes, as discussed, the health and hygiene seems to be a big opportunity, and certainly the e-commerce, because the people have really adapted to ordering online, and e-commerce certainly seems to be one of the big opportunity, because I was surprised to see and hear, suppose the people who are working at home, they are ordering at Amazon, the goods they want, so that is where, the Amazon has penetrated into, right? Okay. So those are the big opportunities, I would say.
Right, great. Thank you. Sukhleen?
On a personal note, for me, the biggest reflection was the moment you take control out of your life, how much of your life you actually save. So I think in these 6 months, because someone who lives in Delhi, works out of Gurgaon, I think just those extra 3 hours a day accumulated over 6 months have really allowed me a chance to get off the treadmill and start walking again. So I think one of the genuinely personal reflections for me is the pause to reflect and, just to slow things down was really something that I really cherished. And I think one of the lessons which perhaps all of us have realized is, I completely echo your sentiment, Harsh. It's amazing how beautifully everyone's been able to adapt and work via technology. And I think indeed it has made people more compassionate, more punctual. People are much more respectful and mindful. That every 1 minute delay on a Teams call hurts much more than someone.
Yes.
So to that extent, I think people are way more respectful of each other's time, and even work. Per se, organizations have also realized how much of your space as well as travel budgets can you lighten up. Embrace technology in a big way, but of course there's a social consequence as well. So there is a bit of a balance that we will have to adapt to as we go back in the real world. And I think on a professional side, I think it's always going to be an interesting debate in a market like India, where TV continues to be the lowest CPRP medium and other mediums grow. I think the real truth is to be consumer first. If transaction choices change, so will media vehicles. So for as long as you're transacting in the lowest kirana outlets, you're an FMCG industry example, you would always find television relevant. But the transaction choices start to shift, we will see media choices shifting as well, because it will go to And I think on that, I am fairly optimistic of the year that comes. Hope we are at least in a safer world, if nothing else. Hopefully more prosperous, but for sure safer.
True. Thanks. Chandramohan?
So I'll respond from an organization context, and I'll just add my 2 bits onto this debate, digital versus television. I find that slightly not as significant or irrelevant, if I may say that, because the consumer behavior, there's so much changing. Okay. And what as marketers, I think the onus on us is now to deeply listen and then make suitable interventions on stuff specific to products, specific to the delivery process, so on and so forth. There's a lot to be done there. And then eventually comes into the picture how to communicate and which medium, so on and so forth. From an organization context, our challenge. So insurance has been purely a physical, the companies have anchored the entire processes on physical distribution. While we were technologically ramping up our facilities, in pandemic, we saw a huge transformation on how the organization came up. We almost issued 3 million policies digitally and settled 2 claims purely on digital. So there is so much that has happened and can happen. Now there is so much now other than the listening. There's huge power of data analytics and tech that has to be leveraged to make meaningful connections.
Great.
I think that those are the things which will finally influence the entire ecosystem.
Okay. Thanks. We have just 2 minutes. So quickly, Lara, and then Sudhakar.
Okay, so I'll just talk about the opportunity. I think there's a big opportunity for semi-urban and rural markets, especially with this current new ruling that has come out. It's going to put a lot more money in the hands of rural consumers, and I think it's a big potential that marketers and us agencies need to look at.
Sudhakar. You're on mute, Sudhakar.
I think Corona had a really profound impact on me as an entrepreneur. I have just taken over, as one of the promoters of this news channel, AP 24/7, and within a month, COVID came down, completely shattered the revenues, everything. So probably I had, profound impact. I've seen profound impact of Corona. Having said that, I think this is an opportunity, but I think we will have to wait and see, the habits that are being cultivated right now, whether it's work from home or, the personal hygiene or the habits being cultivated now, are they going to sustain for the longer period of time? Is it, or is it going to be a temporary blip where, now these days suddenly, everyone starts sanitizing their house, their home, their hands, their everything. And then probably 6 months down the line, you have a vaccine and then, people are going to say bye-bye to all the sanitizers and personal hygiene and all that. You have this saying, old habits die hard. And so I hope that, people will be more responsible right now. And all these habits being cultivated right now are going to stay in the interest of human beings. COVID has taught us that anything can happen any day. And, suddenly we have seen people, I've seen a lot of folks in the US, in their 40s, they were talking about, writing their wills, which is unheard of before. I mean, imagine a 40-year-old guy, right, thinking about a will, and it has never used to happen before. But these days, it is happening now. So I think the silver lining is that I think Corona brought us together, all the countries together. We are the fight is for the long term. And I hope all of us, including all the industries, with the support of all of us, I think we are going to tide this soon. And hopefully we will come out unscratched.
True. Thanks a lot, and fingers crossed for a vaccine soon, and hope to do next year the session in person and face to face. Thank you everyone for a lively session. It was immensely informative for me and hope for our viewers too. Thank you for taking out and wish you all the best.